Welcome to Cute Widgets and More. In this episode, I once again have Mr. Giuseppe D'Angelo on the show. If you don't know him, let me tell you, he is the expert in making trivial things complex, or rather, seeing the complexity in what is usually trivial to the naked eye. Welcome, Peppe.
Thank you, Jesper. I live a very interesting life.
In Qt Creator, when I create a new project, I still see that it writes code like what you see here on my screen, UI : dialog, and then the asterisk UI. Shouldn't that be a unique pointer instead? And what's the implication? That's what we're going to talk about today.
Sounds good to me. So, shall we start from the top? What are we talking about here? What is this code? Where does it come from? And why is there a pointer there? Even. Okay, we are talking about the UI classes, the UI objects that Qt uses when you create a widget or a dialog or a main window using the Qt designer. So there is this technology in Qt. It's a very nice piece of tech. You can just drag and drop your widgets onto a form, let's call it that way, apply layouts, so you see what you're doing rather than just writing it in code. The result of that, as you well know, is a .ui file, which is just XML. And then as a build step, that UI file gets converted to a header file, a .h file, which contains, quote unquote, the implementation of the UI that you assembled graphically. So in other words, it contains a way to say, okay, what did you want to build? Is it a line edit and a text edit and a tab bar? And they're all assembled in a layout that looks like this. Okay, so that .h file contains the code that actually realizes your design. And specifically, that .h contains a class definition. It contains a class, which in this case, it's called Dialog, and it sits inside the UI namespace. And that's exactly what you see there on line 5 and 6, which is the forward declaration for this class. And then a pointer to this class is in line 18. I hope that so far so good, right? Everything that we know about how the widgets work. If you want to know more, I'm going to leave a link in the description about how to use the UI designer.
I will point right up here to an episode in Programming with Qt Widgets where I was talking much more about that. But the key question here really is, I am these days, the first time I do when I see this is I go and change my UI dialog into the UI I'm changing into a unique pointer. Am I just wasting mental and physical powers in my fingers doing that? Or is it a good idea? While you answer the question, let me just start doing what I do. So I have something to do here too.
Yep.
Go.
So you may notice that is a pointer. And it's not just a pointer that you keep around because you need to hook yourself into the dialog and access it, actually. That's the way through which, from your actual implementation of the dialog, you access all the line edits, the buttons, and everything which is inside the dialog. That pointer is an owning pointer. In fact, if you just peek into the destructor of this dialog class that you have on the screen, well, not the UI, but the actual dialog class, Jesper. So, Yep, in there, precisely. Do you see that line 13? There is a delete. Do you know what I hate, Jesper? New and delete in my code. Right?
And the error message from that, it says, well, you can't delete it. So I can just get rid of this. That's much easier, right? And now it compiles and the show is over. Thank you very much for being on this channel, Peppe. It was, oh, wait. What?
Yeah, not so fast, Jesper. Not so fast. One thing at a time. So, can you please undo what you just did and go back to a code which was not exactly working, but yeah. Of course, Creator is complaining that you now are calling a delete on a unique pointer. You can't do that. So what you can just do is get rid of line 13. Yeah, and hopefully that will fix that error. Hopefully. Yep. and everything is fine.
But the whole idea with the unique pointer is that I don't need a destructor. So why do I still need to suffer through the pain of writing a destructor?
That's right. So you're basically hitting here an interesting intersection with the C++ language and with what you're also doing with this particular implementation of your dialog. That is, in the header file, as you see, in the header for dialog, the UI bits are not defined yet. They are just forward declared. So again, line 6 and 7, you're just saying there is a class called Dialog in the namespace UI, and that's all you're saying. You're telling the compiler this name exists. Now, once you have that name, you can do interesting things to it. For instance, you can declare a pointer to it, or even a unique pointer to it. But you cannot destroy an object of type UI dialog without also seeing the definition of that class. There is a number of technical reasons why this is not possible. Let's not go through them right here, right now. I'm just going to tell you, you cannot delete an incomplete class like that.
Wait a minute, Peppe. I just need Robert to make me full screen, and then that animation of my head exploding.
Oh yeah.
Why can I not destruct that? I mean, everybody knows that classes have destructors, so is that beyond that I forgot something there?
Not really. It's more complicated than that, as I said. There are several things you need to take into account when you destroy an object. The first one is that you are absolutely right. Every class has a destructor, whether you declare it or not. But not always that destructor is accessible to you. Maybe the author of that class decided that the destructor needs to be private, that nobody can destroy your objects externally. So that's still a check that semantically you need to do, and you need to be able to do before you attempt destruction. And if you don't see the definition of the dialog class, how can you know that the dialog does not have a deleted destructor for whatever reason? Furthermore, there's other technical reasons, like if you delete an object of this class, you may be interested into understanding how much memory do I need to deallocate. So the size in bytes of the class. And how can you know the size of bytes of the class if you don't see the class, you don't know what are its members? So that's yet another reason. As I said, it's very technical, but fundamentally, it just doesn't make sense from many points of view that for you to be able to just destroy an object without seeing the definition of the corresponding class. So what you did before was a slight mistake that was biting you in one direction. That is, if you remove the destructor from both the header and the C++ file, so if you remove them both, this code may or may not compile. Now, maybe it compiles for you because you're not actually using this class. Are you? No, you are not. Okay. It still complains, but if eventually you see the first error, it tells you something along the side of you cannot call size off on an incomplete class, right? You can't just do this, right? Although this code looks right, the whole point of having unique pointer as data members is not to have a delete in your code, right? But as I said, this is interfering with the fact that the UI is just forward declared. So we have a solution for that as well. You still need to declare your destructor for the dialog class. So in the header, you need to put back the tilde dialog. Yep. And now in your CPP class, you need to define it eventually as empty, because you don't need to call delete, right? You don't need to do anything. And we know that empty special member functions, there is a shortcut syntax for that. That is, you can just write equal default rather than just opening and closing braces.
You mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 character is the shortcut for
Yes.
open brace, close brace. Obviously, they must be very inaccessible on your keyboard if you think this is a shortcut. But
oh yeah, I got an Italian keyboard and I don't have curly braces. I'm kidding, of course.
There we are.
I'm just joking.
But does it really make a difference?
So it does, in the sense that you no longer have a delete in your code. And, call me old-fashioned, but this is actually a problem when you write C++ code. The moment you start seeing new and delete in your code, you somehow panic and you just focus on those. Every time you see a new, the eyes run to where is the corresponding delete, right? When it's the delete, you go checking, is this actually allocated with new? Is it right? Or perhaps is it an object that has been allocated with new array, in which case delete is wrong. You need delete array. We need to stop doing this. We have enough problems as we have right now with C++. Let's use all the help that comes from the library in this case to avoid having new and delete in my code. Behind the scenes, I perfectly know that this is just, there is a delete in there, right? The destructor of unique pointer calls operator delete. That's fine. I don't mind. I just don't see it in my code. And that's better than the alternative.
I guess now this is a subclass of QDialog. So QDialog obviously is subclass of QObject, and they don't like being copied around. But had this been somewhere else where I had that pointer, then my class could have been copied around, and then I would be all of a sudden copying a pointer around and then multiple deletes and whatnot. That's the kind of thing that you're trying to avoid, right?
That is the kind of thing, right? Exactly. Now, generally speaking, the moment you have a destructor with a delete inside, there is something that you should know about that. That is the rule of 5. Once you have a destructor, you should very carefully consider whether your class is copyable and or movable. You should always declare all 5 special member functions because they go together. And this is precisely why, right? To prevent this sort of mistakes.
Right. But given that I have a unique pointer, I cannot copy my class without jumping through a lot of hoops. But going back to this code here, you also made me write the shortcut equal to default. How is that any better than open brace, close brace?
It's more readable, I would wager. It better gives you the intention that that destructor is there just because you need it to be defined in the CPP file. And the reason why it needs to be defined in the CPP file is because inside the CPP file, the destruction can happen because you now see the implementation of the UI class. So it's simply, I would say, more declarative, more idiomatic code. There's no difference, however.
Often in these recordings, I don't even have anybody to play with. I'm just standing there looking into a camera and speaking. And to do a bit of interaction, I ask stupid questions. So I will ask a stupid question now, just because I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understands I'm not that dumb. Maybe I am, given that I need to explain it. It's like a classy lady. If you need to claim that you're classy, then you likely aren't. I'm getting off track here, ain't I? My question is, why even have a pointer here? Couldn't I just have my UI dialog on the stack in this class and be done with it?
Yep, that is in fact completely possible. Instead of declaring a pointer to the UI class, you could just have a UI member. Yeah, just like that. But obviously now you see a slightly different error popping up, which is field has incomplete type. Okay. So what is that error all about? Well, now you no longer have a pointer to your UI class. Now you have an object of that UI, which means that the forward declaration is no longer sufficient. Now you need to include your UI.h from within the header of your class. And that's kind of the trade-off there, right? By hiding the UI behind a pointer, you didn't need to include the corresponding header from your own header. Why is that? Well, why is that a problem? It's not a problem in the strict sense. This works. It is a problem in the sense of compilation times. You would probably expect this to be the answer here, right? A lot of times we hide things behind pointers. We employ a sort of pimple pattern because we want to reduce the impact of indirect inclusions on our compilation times. Here, what's happening is that now with this setup, which works, every time that UI_dialog.h gets changed, and that happens because you just change something in your UI, you open Designer, you add a widget, you change a button position, you do something in there. Every time you change that, the corresponding .h gets regenerated, and now that .h is a dependency of your widget, which means now that everything which is using your widget also needs to be recompiled. So that's the trade-off, right? You're trading a possible bigger and broader and more expensive recompilation for simplicity in your code, because now you can just store that UI file as a data member.
I was just trying when you were speaking there. I thought, but obviously I was super wrong. I thought that they would all be forward declared, but you can see here, I just added a tool button, and that tool button is included. And you are entirely right. If I change something in the UI file, it will force a recompile. Obviously, I don't run around changing Q2 button header files, but still they need to be included. My compiler needs to go through more code when it sees this, which is making it slower. Which reminds me, I would just like to make a small advertise here for a very early episodes in Qt Widgets and more, where I was looking into compile times and how pre-compiled headers made a difference to my project at least, but I needed to be super careful. It's a discussion that I see on the KDAB internal channels come up again and again on, is pre-compiled header a good idea or not? And it is not a entirely yes or entirely no, but you need to be super careful at least. So go and check out this, or is it this URL for that episode. Peppe, it was as always a pleasure to have you here on this channel, and very enlightening. And as I said initially, there is definitely more complexity than what meets the eyes. And I'm glad that you can help me understand that.
Thank you very much, Jesper, for having me again. See you next time.
Thank you. See you.
And cut.